To get started with managing your samples, go to the Inventory tab, and then you can click on freezers to see what's in them, or you can use the tree to navigate. So we'll find the plasmids freezer box, and here you can see that there are already 9 locations that are taken up, and they each have a big red X over it, indicating that you're not able to do anything with these samples that are here. But if you mouse over, then eCAT will tell you who owns them. And if you need to do something with one of these samples, you can then use the notification system up here to send a message to that user to tell them whatever it is you need to do with these samples. So, if you have some samples that you want to store in the freezer box, you want to show that in eCAT, then you can select the locations where you're putting the samples. For example, one by one, you can select them like this, or you can select them as a group using the multi-selection tool, and we'll select, say, 6 here, and then we can just add the aliquots that we're putting in the freezer box. So in this case, we're going to be adding plasmids, and they're all from the same sample, so they're 6 identical aliquots. We'll say create, and there they are. And now you can select some of these to edit. So in this case, maybe we'll select all of them, and you can edit information that's associated with individual aliquots or with the group. For the individual aliquots, you use this icon, and for example, we could set them all to have a volume of, let's say, 100 milliliters. We can save that. We can maybe give them a name. And now each of them has been saved with a name. Now you can also edit information that applies to all of them. And for that you can select any one of them and use this icon to edit the common information, which we call the sample information. So for example, you can put in a description of the sample, you can put in a date, an expiry date. So maybe we'll make an expiry date in a month, and then you can fill in lots of information about these plasmids. You can also make a link to a notebook record that is to do with this, these aliquots. So for example, the experiment that these aliquots were used in. If we save this, then you'll see that if we click on any one of these aliquots, we can see the the summary information for it. And here you'll see there's the volume that we set, there's the expiry date, and here's a link to the experiment record in the notebook. And if we open that up, then you can see none of the information in this experiment has yet been filled out. But if we click this link here, then we can see the plasmid samples that are linked to this experiment. Okay, so let's go back to our freezer box. When you use a sample, you can check it out of the system using this button. And you can then, if you haven't used it all up, you're going to put some back, you can check it back in at a later time. And that will increase the freeze-thaw count. So let's check out and check in. You can also set alerts for the group of samples. So you can get an alert when the number of vials left gets down to a certain value, or when the expiry date is reached, or when the total volume in all of the vials is below a certain level, or when the freeze-thaw count goes over a particular level for any vial in the sample. And there's also a section of the inventory called the workbench. And this is a place where you can create samples that you can then store later. So it's a bit like your lab bench, and we can create some samples. So in this case, maybe we'll create some lipid samples, and maybe we'll create 5 of them. So there they've been created, and you can select some of these and use the same kind of buttons to edit the information about them. And when you've done that, you might then decide that you want to move them all to a container, and you can move them to a new container or you can move them to an existing one. So let's move them to the plasmid box that we had before. Select the plasmid box. And now we have to decide where we're going to put them. And the simple thing to do is to let the system auto-populate them. There they are. Placed in the plasmid box, we say finish, and that's done. And now we can go and have a look at that plasmid box. And there are our new samples.